articulate them in a language that speaks to our condition today. I'd like to start by going back to the very beginnings of the Buddhist tradition itself, and that, of course, is to the life of the Buddha himself. The Buddha was born sometime in the 5th century BC. Legend has it that he was the son of a great king, and that he grew up in a series of palaces, one for each season of the year. And in these palaces, he was offered everything that we could possibly dream of. He had beautiful surroundings, he had wonderful friends, he had a fantastic education, he was being groomed to become the king of his father's realm. And yet, despite all of this comfort, despite all of this achievement and power and so on, he felt that he was somehow missing out on something. He then asked his father whether he could take an excursion beyond the palace walls and see the kingdom that one day he would inherit. His father arranged a series of trips, but before sending his son out, he made sure that the place was really very beautiful, that nothing disturbing would upset his son on these excursions. So the young man went outside. He was accompanied by his charioteer, and he traveled around the land. And then he came across the sight of someone crippled with disease. And he turns to his charioteer and he says, "Well, what's going on here?" The charioteer tells him, "This is someone who is sick, someone ill." And the Buddha replies, "And this will happen to everyone? This will happen to me as well?" Then the charioteer says, oh yes, this is unavoidable. This is the fate of all that lives." He then returns to the palaces, and then on the next trips, he encounters a person who is crippled with age. On the next trip after that, a man who is dead, a corpse. And on each occasion, he asks the same questions, and he gets the same replies. Now, I think it's actually rather stretching credibility to imagine that this literally happened in the way it described. The Buddha, after all, was growing up in India. To think that someone could literally be protected against sickness and aging and death is simply too much to believe. What we have here, I think, is not an historical account. We have a legend, we have a myth. And as legend or myth, this story is telling us as much about our own condition as it is that of the Buddha. Let's take the example of the palaces. The palace, I think, stands for a state of existence in which we are confined, we are constrained, not only by the demands of society and our family and our parents and so on, but also psychologically we find ourselves in a state in which we close ourselves off in some way to those aspects of life that we find frightening, threatening, upsetting in some deep way. To go outside the palace walls is tantamount to glimpsing the greater life that lies beyond our own immediate concerns, our own little melodramas in which we are so often preoccupied. And what we see when we step outside those walls is life itself. I don't believe that the Buddha literally saw a sick or a dying person for the first time, but I do feel that it was at those moments that he first understood the significance and the implications of what it means to be human.